Okay, everyone. We have with us Celine and her film 80 Years Later. I am so excited to have you, Celine, joining us today. It's crazy because my husband is actually Japanese American from Hawaii, and his grandfather and his grandmother on his mother's side, they actually were both in the internment camps. And so I watched your film with him, and we had the other judges watch it in their own time. But when I watched it with my husband, and we were just like, we were so blown away because there are no stories about this. And we're just like, why aren't people screaming and yelling about this? Like, this is just and you know why? It's because Japanese culture is it's because it's very cultural. They're always like, just stay quiet, don't stand out, like don't cause any disruptions. And so it's just so interesting. So anyway, oh my gosh, I'm so happy to have you. Share with us a little bit about your film, because this Q&A is actually going to be posted and people are going to have access to it before the festival and also after the festival. And the idea is, maybe they watch our Q&A and they're going to be like, oh, what is that film 80 years later? And maybe they're going to get motivated to watch it. But tell us a little bit about it, some background on it, what inspired and motivated you to create it, and what you gleaned from this whole process of making this film.
Christina, before I answer your question, I can't help but say that you and I are both Asian American women. I assume you're Korean American.
I am Korean American. Yep.
And I'm Filipino American. Yeah, I'm Filipino American.
Oh, great.
Both married to Japanese American men.
Oh my gosh, so interesting.
And, we have a colonial history.
Yeah.
Within our relationships, when I married my husband, my family would call him the Japanese, as if like he was Japan, or there was, definitely like this kind of underlying suspicion or
for sure.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting. So here we are.
Breaking barriers, building bridges.
Making different connections, right? So this film 80 Years Later is about my husband's Japanese American family, and they're fifth generation Americans.
My husband's fifth generation American too. Crazy. Right.
Based in the Bay Area until they were forcibly removed and had to relocate to the Midwest. A real uprooting, right? I mean, they grew up here. There were so many Japanese Americans in Japantown in San Francisco. And when you look at his photographs, he's the only non-white person in a class of 30, 40 kids. And how can he even explain that he had just been evacuated, that his entire family was in prison?
Yeah.
Like when he went to Cincinnati to start school. So I married into this family, the kindest, most loving family. And I noticed that there definitely, were these remnants that they were grappling with, and they were still making sense of it and trying to figure out what to pass on. And so I wanted to make sure not only to document it, but to engage it, to engage the complexity of it, because my kids are fifth generation Japanese Americans. It's their story.
Yeah. Absolutely. What has been the reaction from your husband after seeing this film come together?
Well, for many of us, films have a history of harm, and hurt, exclusions happened in the film industry. And so I'm very conscious that a way we can undo that harm is by creating films as a salve, and to register our stories and to make them worth drama, and even the resources it takes to make a film. So one thing that we were very conscious about was to make sure not to harm anyone who was involved in the film, because we're really putting a light on something that had to be put in the dark in order to survive, right?
Yes.
And so we wanted to make sure that there was consent and a willingness to go not only to those places, physical places, but the memory of what it meant to grow up with that kind of legacy, and the making sense of being in a place where you're so foreign, even though you're fourth generation, third generation.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, the family actually really considers it a gift, to have put that history on film. I mean, I'm just so happy that I was able to put in the yearbook photos of my father-in-law,
Yes.
who was the star quarterback and president of his class. It's almost unimaginable for many people to imagine that an Asian American man could accomplish that in the 50s. But there he was doing it. And at the same time, there was a lot of
what's so
loss.
crazy? It's
Yeah.
like, I wonder if the reason why he was so popular and so liked was because he almost did it as like a defense mechanism. It's like, if I am really nice to people, if I'm really like, fun, then like people won't make fun of me, especially because he grew up in an area where there were no Asians. He was like the only Asian. And not only that, but there was that added layer of him being Japanese and all the racism and stuff that was going on. Like he almost wanted to like prove to them that like he wasn't like that, so he had to try so much harder to like not be like that, or like not have people think that he was like that. Right.
It's what you said at the beginning of this interview, right? Keep your head down.
Mm-hmm.
Don't get in trouble. I mean, that's exactly what his mother said to him.
Oh
She
my
said,
gosh.
be careful, because how you behave will determine how other Japanese Americans are treated. Can you
Yeah.
imagine? And
Yeah.
so he went all the way. He became the best of the best.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you're like, well, why did she do that? Did she do that ultimately to take care of him and give him almost like a carefree existence where it wasn't really, like when she said that the internment wasn't that bad, why did she do that? Was it to protect him, right? So he could have a kind of freedom, and not have that burden.
Resentment towards,
Yeah.
everything. Yeah. I mean, what if she hadn't said that? What if she said, oh, it was horrible, like your father was like, away from us, and he was like treated in these horrible circumstances. Like, how would that have affected, his outcome, right? His upbringing, it's just, but it's so interesting too, because like, it's like, even in the interview, even though he was, outwardly popular and successful, it's just like he still had this like deep like hurt inside of his heart, right? Like, something that I grappled with, and it's not very, it's very different, but the whole idea, like with me, I grew up in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and there were like no Asian people out there. And I got made fun of, for just, because I was different. I was the only person out there, that was Korean American. And, it's like, I had to try extra hard to be friendly and nice and stuff, but it's like I was ashamed of being Asian. Like I refused to date Asian men because I didn't want my children to be Asian, and it's like it's like there was this deep hurt, and I feel like the only way that I was able to overcome that was I went to college, I went to USC, and for the first time I was around other Korean Americans like myself, and I was like, oh my gosh, they're like normal. They're like me, and then, I went and I lived in Korea for a little bit, where I was like, it was like nothing but Asians, and that was like also another, like time for me to embrace that, but had I not had those key moments, I would have probably not married a Japanese American man. It's just so interesting how, and it's like, I lived with that. It's like this insecurity, that I had a battle, myself, because I didn't want to tell anybody about it because it's embarrassing, and so it's just, I guess like my question to you is, how did you decide to make the story? Like, how did you and your husband like have this conversation? Like, how did all of this come up? Like, for you to make this, like decide, what, we need to make a story about this, like share with us that process.
It's precisely that intimacy that you're talking about, where all of these social relationships and ideas just penetrate into your most private sense of self, right? And when I would look at my father-in-law, he was just like the most gregarious person,
Yes.
very lighthearted, but then also so respected within his community. So he also had a gravitas to him, and he also had a kind of tenderness, and I don't know where that's from. I mean, he definitely says that he wishes he could have embraced his Asian American, Japanese American culture, but I think it really would have been impossible for him to have done that. Really impossible,
Yeah.
So I wanted to make sure that he is also kind to himself and recollecting his experience. And when I look at him, I think I really love him, you know, I think because he's such a particular model of manhood and masculinity that's both gentle and strong and confident as well as humble, you know?
Yeah.
So there was something about him that maybe that's why the film is so successful too, because he's just so adorable, you know, as a main character, you know? And so he actually wasn't such a willing subject at the beginning of
Oh,
it.
he wasn't.
Yeah, he was like, what are you doing? You know, and everyone else was quite willing. Like his grandson, my nephew Matthew, was like, yeah, let's do it. Let's go. You know, I don't like, you know, he really doesn't like, you know, like not being accepted as a Japanese American, and people are always questioning him about it. So he's like, let's do this. And my father-in-law was more like, why are you doing this? Why do you think it's worth anything? You know, and finally I was like, well, we're going to do this. We're going to go to Cincinnati. We're going to go to your high school. We're going to go to your house where you grew up. We're going to go to the store. And if you're not there, it's going to kind of look like you're not around. And he was like, okay, I guess I'm going to do it because I can't really stop you, but fine, you know?
Oh my God.
So after he agreed, we worked together for a couple of months, meeting every week and really just talking about it. And I thought it was really
It must have been so therapeutic for him.
I mean,
I don't think he's ever really talked about it.
Yeah. And I think I don't know if they didn't talk about it. Like he always sought it out. He read books about it. He wanted to understand it. It's not like I think it's very different from Kyo's experience in the film, who's 15 years older than him.
Yeah.
He knew what it was like as a teenager to lose your freedom.
Yeah.
But for him, he was just like, oh, this is a kind of camp, you know? And so when he saw his older cousins, you know, very late in life, I think in his 60s, tell a different version of that experience.
Oh, interesting.
He began a kind of political awakening and a kind of rage and anger, you know, about it. And so I wanted all of that. I wanted that intimacy of emotion, and I wanted to capture, you know, what it was like, because I think the moment the film was born was in 2013 when we went to Cincinnati, when he was inaugurated into the High School Athletic Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
You know, his competing baseball team, his competing football team met him at the ceremony. Like, I was like, what is this, Greece? You know, but they were there to give him respect. And I just thought, this is so bizarre and weird. Like, everyone's white except for him, you know? Yeah. I just wanted to put it down, to put it on film.
Wait, Celine, where did you grow up? Did you grow up around a lot of Asians?
No, I mean, I grew up in the Philippines. There's a
lot. Oh, yeah, well, nothing but Asians out there, yeah.
and then immigrated in my teens, you know, as a political exile. So I don't have a lot of photographs of my own childhood. So it was really great that my husband's family does. And then I moved to Cambridge, Massachusetts for high school.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so I'm familiar with what you're talking about, you know?
Yes, the whole being one of the few Asians growing up.
We were the only
Filipinos in very, very, very white. Yes.
And racist.
And very racist.
Not just white, but also racist. I just always, like, people would say things to you, and I always felt a kind of sense of, like, if something would happen, it would happen to me because I'm the only person of color in this entire train platform. It just felt a little scary, you know?
Gosh,
just that feeling of not being accepted was definitely there in the culture, you know?
Absolutely. How did you end up meeting your husband? How did your paths
like
cross?
you, UC Berkeley. So we
oh my gosh, you guys, wow.
You know, I went to high school that was the only Filipinos were me and my siblings. And then I came to Berkeley, and it felt like at the time 40% Asian maybe. And I just, like, it was completely overwhelming. You know, like, what is going on here? There's so many people, you know. I even felt like in high school, there was a bit of a, like, Asians at the time, I don't know, it just felt a bit excluded from, like, the romance economy. But then when I came to Berkeley, there definitely was this fetishism around Asian women.
Oh my gosh, I know. Oh gosh, I live in San Francisco, and I know that all too well. It's so funny. So I actually met my husband on Tinder, and it was like, it got to a point where, like, at first I had no idea what I was doing. So I just, like, I didn't put anything in my bio section, and I just, like, I had so much fun. I was like, oh my gosh, like, I matched with this person. This is crazy. And then towards the end, after like going out on some dates with some people with some fetishes, I was just like, I am only gonna swipe right on Asian men. Like that is it.
Yeah,
But
that is
yes,
so
oh my
funny.
gosh. So you met your husband in college and then like, did you just kick it off right away? Like, is he outgoing like you? Is he more quiet? Like, because
My
you're very
husband's
outgoing.
my husband's
So
extremely attractive, like ridiculous, like he's that kind of person. He walks into a room, you like double take, you're like, oh, amazing. That's so much beauty a person can possess.
like, I'm going after you.
And just and just super kind and super brilliant, and but we didn't get together until after college.
Oh,
And I think it
wow.
was interesting in terms of, I think, a kind of racial alliance that we had. We didn't have to explain a lot of things, and I think we were kind of committed to that, you know?
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. There's that comfort. You know what? One of the things that I found so fascinating with your film was their inability to say I love you to one another. And I don't know what it is, but my husband's grandfather was also, in the internment camps, him and his grandmother. And this is what my husband told me, but
Mhm,
he
mhm.
said that he cannot recall them actually saying, I love you to their children, and they had 3 children. And it just kind of made me wonder, and this is definitely something that I want to bring. I want them to watch your film. And then afterwards, I want to have a discussion about it with them, because they themselves are the children of parents who also went through the internment camps. And it's just like, I don't know. And it's like, and their parents, the ones who went through internment camps, they were in Mountain View, California, and they were taken to an internment camp, I believe, like somewhere in that area. But it's like, how does that affect you being the child of, a parent who went through just these horrible, horrible like circumstances, and it's just, you know, them just shutting off almost emotionally. How does that affect, like your upbringing, when you're growing up as a child?
That was definitely one of the most unexpected results of the filmmaking. I did not expect Kyo, the grandma, and her daughter Jean to talk
Yeah.
about how the social trauma of having been
Yeah. I
imprisoned,
love that
yeah,
part.
enters inside the relationship and shows up in this inability to express love.
Yes.
And you can see that they did so much work as a mother and daughter. Jean is a social worker, so she really understands how trauma shows up in unexpected ways. And they did so much work that they just palpably love each other so much, like
Yes.
when Jean said, I love taking care of you as my mom, and I love being the caretaker of your story. I just started jumping up and down because we got there. I didn't know where this was going in terms of that
Yeah.
discussion of the inability to express love. Now they say it all the time. They just
Yes.
say, they
I
said,
love that.
we
It's like
let the
it's been
love
unlocked.
flow.
It's been unlocked.
Yeah. Yeah. It's been unlocked. And while we're alive on this earth, we're going to just shower each other with so much devotion and care,
And
you
it's so
know?
good for her children to see that too, because now they have the model and the permission to be able to be like that too, right?
Yeah. Which is interesting, right? Because you were saying like, oh, grandpa's mom didn't want him to experience the camps in this way, but it's actually this third generation where they are confronting it, and
Yeah.
we're passing on the lesson that we need to confront it.
Yes, I completely
Yeah.
agree. So, Celine, I have a question for you. What is next for you? Like, what are the things like this film? It's like, it's going through film festivals right now. Like, okay, so first, what has been the thing that surprised you the most as people have seen this, as you've shown this, to different festivals, to different people, to different audiences? What's the thing that surprised you so far? What are the things that you've learned so far from doing so?
Well, the gift that I ended up giving myself in the making
Mm-hmm.
of the film is really the recognition that listening, to each other respectfully means you gain so much for yourself, by listening to the next generation or listening to the generation before you. I
Yeah.
think that they really modeled that respectful listening and respectful speaking. And I hope that it does encourage more multi-generational conversations. Like, don't just sit around, like dig up and try to understand each other, and don't assume
Yes.
that you already understand each other, like
Yes.
make the effort to ask questions. And it's actually so rich, so joyful, so delicious, even, that kind of learning from each other that you can do. So even, you and I are talking right before Thanksgiving. Why not like make the decision to look forward to it and say, I'm going to learn some stories that I didn't know about. And I'm going to tell them stories about myself that they may not know either,
Yes,
and how
definitely.
wonderful will that be?
And especially I think within like Asian cultures, like, and like more so with like Japanese cultures, especially, they're just very private, and like even my mother-in-law, I adore her, my husband's mother, but she's so private, and she doesn't talk about, a lot of personal things. And it's just like just taking the time to create an environment where, she feels comfortable, like opening up and talking about those things. And, it's just like making that effort, it's just, I just feel like that's definitely something that has been in the back of my mind as well. But it's just, it's interesting how there are just, I think there's definitely a cultural aspect of it too. Where it's just, they just don't really, they're not as open, right? They don't just freely talk about, their things. Maybe it's because nobody's ever done that to them, so they don't know how to do it, so all it takes is somebody just kind of leading the way. And like what you did when you were making this documentary, asking those questions, going deep, and just like caring.
And I think there's a way to listen where you don't have to say, this is what something means. Grandpa ended the film by saying, maybe it's just better to talk about it and not decide what it means. And I love that, because it means maybe there are certain things that we just don't understand, and we can stand in front of it and appreciate it for what it is. Like, that there's so much about their experiences that we can't possibly understand, but that there's something worthwhile in recognizing that difference, Christina,
Okay,
I have to plug in my computer because I don't know why suddenly it's losing power.
Oh my gosh, okay. Plug in your computer.
I just disappeared for a second.
No worries.
Thanks.
Yes,
okay,
but
now I'm good.
Celine, like what's next? Like what's next for you? Like, and the thing is, were you like did you make documentaries before this? Is this your very first one? Like, give us all the details.
I'm pretty obsessed with the archive, because there's so much that we don't know, and I love learning about it. My previous feature film also used the archive. It's called the Celine Archive, which is my name.
Ooh.
But it's not about me. It's about a Filipina American woman who was buried alive.
Oh my gosh.
1932 in Northern California. She was accused of adultery,
They buried her alive. That is insane.
They had a bunch of jewelry and a bunch of money. They didn't take it. They just wanted to silence her, And so I went into the archive and, discovered other narratives, because it really wasn't true, the accusation against her.
Yeah.
So I'm pretty obsessed with the archive. There's so much that we can learn about where we live,
Yep.
And I'm also a scholar. And so I just finished my fourth book very recently. It'll come out hopefully 2024. It's really related. Yeah, it's really related to this film. It's about the practice of attunement, like paying attention to children and what that teaches us about how to live better, as adults, and the way you can learn about that by looking at the movies, because movies are a way of getting inside someone psychically, and you can figure them out. Like the way that they behave physically reveals so much about what's inside their sense of self-love or self-hate, right?
Yep.
And Christina, you'll be interested to know that the next film that I'm working on is something that I'm so completely afraid of, which is a kind of post-Atlanta accounting of how Asian American women have to live under the assumption that we are hypersexual.
Yes. Oh my gosh, I love that. I love
Yeah.
that. Yes.
We don't talk
Especially in
enough
this culture,
about,
like does not help at all. Like
no,
Hollywood does not help at all. And that's a
no.
lot of the reason why, I myself as a filmmaker, why I'm creating, content that shows like we don't just exist for your like sexual pleasure. Thank you
Yeah.
very much.
Not even ours, theirs. Yeah. But like after Atlanta, right? Like the
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 massage
indictment,
parlor.
yeah, the massage, but the killings of the 6 Asian
Yeah.
American women, and
Yeah.
it was attributed to some kind of sexuality that drove the killer
Gosh,
crazy,
I know.
right? What is that? Like that attribution can lead to death and
I know.
killing, right? Like that it's so scary that you have to extinguish it.
Yeah.
And so that's really linked to, my role because I'm a dean at the University of California.
Oh my
And
gosh.
there's very, very few Asian American women in such high leadership roles, even though
Yeah,
so
this is
many
so
of us,
cool.
yeah, even though
Well,
so many of us are higher ed.
my best
Yeah.
friend also is a scholar. She's a PhD as well, but that's not common at all. So props to you.
No.
That's
Yeah,
amazing. I
thanks,
love that.
thanks.
I
And
love
so
that.
I talked to other Asian American women who are, really high ranking and high powered. And, one of them was just saying, if I sit down and think about it, I tell myself, oh, I'm so lucky that I didn't get raped that one time, or that one other time, or that one other time. And she says, but while it did not hit that threshold, there's still this culture where that assumption greets you when you walk into
Yes.
a room. So she's like, how does that get in the way of what I'm trying to do? I mean,
Yep.
all this attack on reproductive rights, for women to own their own bodies. And I think, the more I talk to women about it, the more it's designed to disenfranchise women from positions of power, from influencing society, to
Yep.
own our own freedom, so
Yep.
I want to talk to Asian American women about those events and,
Yes.
formative events. And I want to talk to them about what do they desire? If our desire and our sexuality is spoken for by everyone else, well, what is it when we have to say what it is? I think it's going to be hard to remove it from what other people say we are, but I'm going to try
Yeah,
to figure that
absolutely. Oh my
out.
gosh. Well, I cannot wait until, this film starts into production. And when you're finished with this film, please submit it because I
Thank
want to
you.
see it and
Oh yeah,
share it
we'll
with
talk
our
more about
audience.
it. Filmmaker to
Yeah.
filmmaker, right? Yeah.
Yes. But for people who want to stay in touch with you, for people who want to follow your journey, like what are your socials? Like where can they find you? Like what's your Instagram and your YouTube and what is all of that? Like tell us.
Um, it's so sad. I don't know what's happening with Twitter, right? But I'm usually on there
Okay, that's good. What's
as
your Twitter?
Celine,
What's your Twitter?
Celine Shimizu. But let's see
Okay.
what's going to happen to it, right?
Well, it's okay for now,
Yeah,
like they know to follow you there until, whatever ends up happening. So it's Celine, CELINE SHIMIZU, right?
that's right. That's right.
Perfect.
And
And is that the
currently,
same?
no, currently I'm trying to figure out what to do with my Instagram because I only friend people on Instagram if I've been to your house or been to your studio, But now
You
that
need to
Twitter's going
create,
away,
you need
I'm
to
like,
create a professional one, like maybe like
okay, thanks.
your production studio one, create a production studio and then just like put everything under the production studio one.
So I can't figure out the name yet to be able to share it with you right now.
Oh,
So
okay.
what to
Okay. So
do? I don't know.
Twitter, we'll follow you on Twitter for now. And then
Yeah,
once you figure it out, you'll tweet it out.
that's
And then
right.
we can just
That's right.
follow you on the other things.
Well,
Like,
I know what to do. You can go to 80yearslater.film.
perfect.
And then
80 years
we'll
later
put
dot
the
film
new, yeah, we'll put all the social media stuff there because as you know, it's still in flux right now because
as
of
it
what's
comes
going on.
together.
Yeah, but we have a beautiful website with all the clips and trailers and all the awards it's won. And you can download the hopefully by the holidays, you can download the prompts that are in the film, like those
Oh,
beautiful questions.
yes.
So we're working on that. The website's very much alive. So I hope you
I
all
love that.
enjoy it.
I
Yeah,
love that. So table conversation with your family over
that's
Thanksgiving.
right. Yeah.
Yes.
Is your
Yes.
inheritance a curse or a gift?
Yes. Yes.
Right?
I loved all those questions in the film. And
Yeah,
I just
yeah.
feel like those questions, like because you're putting it out there, people take a step back and they're like, oh, how do I feel about this? And it gets them, it's like an opportunity. Questions are an opportunity.
Questions are an opportunity. And it was amazing to come up with those questions. My collaborator, J. Reed Miller, wrote those questions based on what people said in the film. And, you know, he was about to get on a plane. I said, we have to have an authorial intervention in the film. Write up sets of prompts that we can use, you know, 5 times within the film. And after he got off 6 hours later, there it was, just perfect.
Love it.
Yeah.
Well, Celine, thank you so much for sharing
Thank
your film
you.
and your time with us. And again, everybody, if you want to stay up to date, either follow Celine on Twitter or go to the website 80yearslater.film. And Celine, everybody, have a wonderful Thanksgiving.
Thank you. You too. Wonderful to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.